Hey there, YouTube friends. Rainy with No Idle Hands. And this is going to be an update of a different sort. I just want to get real today. I want to take the mask off and show you real me, or express real me. So, confession. I had my first full-blown anxiety attack since I think it was early 2020 or late 2019. I can't remember. And I'm not happy about it. In fact, I'm angry. I have done so well for so long. It used to be I couldn't live my life without having anxiety attacks. I changed professions. I changed the way I lived because of my anxiety attacks. And I finally found someone who would listen to me, got the right meds. My life got better. Well, not really got better. It got better because the medication helped. But I was put in a situation. It was thrust upon me. I didn't really have a choice. And I'll explain that in a minute. But I was put in a choice where I had no control over it. I couldn't back away. I mean, I could, but there would have been some serious repercussions. And I'm angry about it. I'm not angry at me. I'm angry at the situation because it should have never happened. And let me disclose here, I am not mad at the hospital that I work for. Not mad at the agency I work for. Definitely not mad at the agency I work for. It's not just the hospital I'm currently working at. It is everywhere in this United States. There are not enough nurses. So hence the situation that caused my anxiety attack. I'll give you the full rundown. And I don't normally talk about things like this if you're new to my channel. This is not the typical thing you're going to see. So if you start to feel uncomfortable or you get bored, just flip on and don't watch this one. Skip this one and go to the next one. I apologize up front, but this is the real me coming out here. So, the situation. I'm a travel nurse. I go from contract to contract, different places, and I knew going into being a contract nurse that I would be put in some pretty shitty situations. Sorry about that, YouTube, if I offend anyone with my language. But that's the truth of it, is that I go where I'm needed. I go to the hospitals that need help because they don't have enough nurses. That's what travel nurses do. So I expect it's not going to be all roses and sunshine. I mean, the last hospital I was at, the whole floor was travelers because there was no core staff. It is what it is. However, there comes a point where it becomes dangerous, and that's where I was at last night. Now, the thing about being a nurse is once you, I'm not sure. If there's any other nurses out there watching this, you might want to enlighten me. But once you clock in, if you leave, you can be they can get you for job abandonment. They can take your license. Now, I'm not sure if it's just if you clock in or if you take report on your patients and then leave. But I very seldom ever know how many patients I'm going to have until after I've clocked in. Because sometimes they don't have the assignments written up on the board for whatever reason. But anymore, it's getting so. If I'm floated to another unit, I can pretty much guarantee I'm going to have at least 7 to 8 patients. Last night I had 9. That is the most patients, I believe. I mean, excluding the last hospital, but the last hospital was different. The last hospital, they were all ready to pretty much discharged. No IVs, no telemetry. All I had to do was basically keep them clean, dry, fed, and medications. Still a lot of medications, but it wasn't like they were not stable. If they were medically unstable, if they became medically unstable during the night, they would go to a different unit because we didn't deal with that at the other hospital. And I've been a nursing home nurse where I've taken care of 42 patients, but there again, different story. They're just there to have somebody watch them. Last night I was in charge of 9 critically ill / trauma patients. Had a couple of motor vehicle accidents, had a couple of post-surgical for infection kind of people. Had a couple that just fell at home and broke something. One gastritis, which, he wasn't that big of a deal to deal with except for his pain. And his, alcoholism that, when they go in the hospital and you're in alcohol and you're in detox, we have to do an assessment every 2 hours, because we have medication we can give them if they're, if they go into the DTs. And then I had one on a PCA pump, which was every 2 hours because we got to make sure they're still breathing and they're not getting over sedated. I had one in particular with super low blood pressure that at the beginning of the shift, before our shift, her blood pressure was okay. Not okay, but it was low normal. I got a report that she didn't respond much because that was her norm. My tech comes to me at 9 o'clock and says, hey, her blood pressure's over 70 over 40 something. So I'm like, oh. Call the doctor and I'm like, hey, got to looking back, and sure enough, earlier in the day she'd had a low blood pressure and they'd given her a bolus. Came back up. Okay. The doctor says, well, let's try some different medicine, different fluid expander. I don't want to give too many details, HIPAA and all of that. I can't really, And so we did, we followed the doctor's orders. And her blood pressure at one point got down to 60 over 30. I was getting super scared. Because there comes a point, and that, so this is now the lowest blood pressure I've ever taken care of. A couple weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving, I guess it was last week, I had one that had almost as low of a blood pressure, but I got her to ICU. But this lady was not waking up. At least the other lady was talking to me, last week. She said, oh, this is my normal. I do this all the time, blah, 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 blah. No big deal, it is a big deal, but, I'm okay. I'm awake and I'm talking to you. It's okay. They tell me as long as I'm awake and talking, I'm okay. The lady last night was not talking to me. She was not waking up. So we followed the hospital protocol. I say we, me and the charge nurse, which, let me stop here for a moment and say there was only 3 of us on our floor taking care of 27 patients. And so myself and the charge nurse were occupied with this patient for over an hour, leaving one nurse for the other 26 patients. We were on the floor. He could have came and got us if he needed us. A lot of things they dealt with them the best they could. Him and the one tech that we had. Yes, you heard me right, one tech. So, that was 3 nurses. We started the shift with 4 nurses and 2 techs, and 11 we lost 1 nurse and 1 tech because they'd been there since 11 in the morning. And So, yeah. And I mean, it was one of those nights. I mean, I started off the night on a bad foot because I was. I mean, I walk in and it's like deer in the headlights. You know, ordinarily, I have a great memory. You give me a report on 5 patients, and I will remember every word you say to me. 6 patients, same. I've gotten to where I can handle 6 patients. And I will recall every single word you tell me about my patients. You tell me I got 9, and details start flying out the window because I can't process that much information. I just can't. I can't remember it all. I can't even remember why my patients were even there last night. Of course, I have slept. I slept for like 10 hours, and I try to let most of it go. But I started off on a bad foot because I'm like, oh, how am I ever going to do this? And of course, it was one of those shifts where everything went wrong. Everything. You know, couldn't get the glucometer to work. Couldn't, everything that should have just been moving smoothly had a chink in it and took me 10 minutes longer than it should have, or 15 minutes longer than it should have. I mean, right down to my little guy that, all I needed to do was go up and hook up his IV and let his IV run because that's all he had was IV medications. He's like, can you take me out? I mean, he wasn't quite mentally right in the head. And I have a special spot for those people because I was a special ed teacher. He's like, can you take me out to the board, the big black board, so I can see my stuff, my information? I'm like, sure. So I helped him into the wheelchair because he was one of the ones that got hit by a car, and so I helped him out to. I mean, I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to take those 15 minutes it took me to get him in a wheelchair and wheel him up to the nurse's station. I did not have to do that. I could have said, I don't have time. I just don't have time. But I took him up there, and he found his name, and then he started asking me questions. He said, what do those letters stand for? What, and we went through every column. Because he just wanted to understand. I'm sorry, guys. But at what point do I say, hey, I've got to get back to work? I've got 8 other patients that I have to hook up IVs and give pain medicine, I couldn't do that to him. So I get him back to his room and hook him up to his IV. But that was just an example of my night. Maybe I take on too much as a nurse. But I feel like these patients are not getting the care they deserve. Not the care that I want to give. The guy who's on clear liquids and all the man wants is some beef broth, and I can't find any to save my life. So I had him chicken. I mean, that's the best I could do. But it's not good enough for me because he wanted beef. That's the kind of nurse I am. Whatever my patients need or want, I will move heaven and earth for them. This is the real me, guys. This is the real nurse coming out here. You don't ordinarily get this. But anyway, the anxiety attack. The lady with the low blood pressure, let's go to back to that. She's fine. Well, not fine, but we got her back to where I can't go into the details because of HIPAA, but we got her blood pressure back up to at least acceptable range. And I went on with my night. Sorry, I got off on a tangent. But The anxiety attack was about 4:30 this morning. I had dealt with everything. I did the best I could with every situation I had. I did, like, the beef broth and the chicken broth. I did the best I could. But then, it wasn't even my patient that caused the anxiety attack. There was another guy that just started going off on his roommate, because we do have semi-private rooms. I don't know. I just heard angry voices, and I heard scared voices, and I wasn't really listening at that point, because I was trying to do documentation, because if it's not documented, it's not done. If I don't do an assessment, the whole world's gonna fall apart, I mean, it looks like I didn't even touch my patient. It looks like I didn't even look at my patient if I don't do an assessment. Although God knows that's not true. But anyway, I was only half listening, but I could hear the angry and the upset and the out of one ear. And I was like, is there anything else that's going to happen tonight? Is there anything else? And I mean, we had screamers over on the other side, but this little argument over here, this little angry, scared thing is what set me off. Because I'd had enough. The back of my brain, where I shove everything, had enough. It was full. The bank was full. It said, I'm done. Can't process anymore. You're on your own, sister. And that left me to deal with. And I don't know if I've ever told you guys, I have PTSD. And confrontation is not one of those things I handle well. I am doing better when I'm fully rested and I have the faculties to process it all. I still don't take it super well, but at least it doesn't cause me anxiety. Until last night, when I'd had enough and I was overstimulated and I was anxious anyway, and it just over the top. I can pinpoint it to that argument, that incident, that whatever it was. And people started flying, and, well, the whole, 2 other nurses and 1 tech started, to get in there and get things separated so nobody got hurt. But me, I was in the med room, doing my thing. It used to be, before the medication, I had what looked like to be seizures. They were anxiety attacks. And that's what happened last night. Not to the same degree as it used to be. I mean, I'd be down on the floor, couldn't breathe, and it'd look like I was having a seizure. Last night, I was at least able to get myself to a safe spot, a quiet spot, and sit down. But I still froze. I was still biting my lip. Biting my lip. That's for me and my anxiety attack. It was previously a fever blister, and I bit down so hard I bit the scab and everything off. Surprised I don't have a chunk missing. And my hands were clenched, and I just sat there for I don't know how long. Just breathing, because that's all I know how to do is breathe. And counting. That's something I learned to do, is to focus on something else. But that was my anxiety attack. And then I had I don't give a crap attitude after that, because I was like, I'm done. No more tonight. I'm done. I went and hid in a hole somewhere with my computer. Finished my charting, had some quiet time, avoided everybody else for the rest of the shift. I mean, staff-wise, I still took care of my patients, because God knows you can't just not take care of your patients, especially when you have 9 of them. And then came shift change, where I gave the world's crappiest report. Luckily, it was most of the same people that I'd gotten a report from the same day, or the day before, and it's like, meh. I maybe saw this patient 5 minutes. This is what happened. I did nothing for them, did their assessments, and gave their meds, and that's it. And then I never saw them again the rest of the night except to run down the hall and do my rounds. If I got my rounds done. I mean, the only ones that I really gave a good report on were the ones that I had to actually deal with. So, you know, there was a lot of good catches last night that, had it not been for the superstellar charge nurse who was helping me, a patient might have died. Plain and simple. Because she had the calmer, more level head. She was detached from the situation, my situation of the low blood pressure. You know, she got to look at it in the chart. She's like, oh, hey, what about this, this, and this? You know, and I mean, but, you know, beyond that, it took like 2 hours to get the medication I needed, because I guess the pharmacy is just as short as we are. Because that was at 9. I didn't start the medicine until 11. I'm sorry that I rambled so much during this. Like I said, if you're still watching this and you're new to my channel, this is not my typical rant. So, anyway, if you still like me after this, please consider giving me a like, a comment, share with your friends, especially if you have people in high places that can do things about things. That this is not acceptable, and it's a trend. All over the United States, it's a trend. Especially in big hospitals. I can't even imagine what it's like in St. Louis right now. I just can't imagine. So, nothing against anyone involved. I mean, it's, like I say, a nationwide epidemic. I don't know. There is no blame for it. There's just not enough nurses and too many sick people. So people, quit getting sick. Quit going to the hospital and quit getting sick. It's your fault. No, not really. That's my sense of humor trying to come back. But anyway. I love you guys. Thank you for supporting me. And I'll catch you on the next video.